Marcus Thompson walked slowly down the cracked sidewalk on Elm Street. His backpack hung heavy on his thin shoulders. The October wind was cold, and he pulled his jacket tighter around his body. At 12 years old, Marcus was small for his age. His shoes had holes in them, and his jeans were too short. But his dark eyes were bright and curious about everything around him. The old community center sat at the end of the block. It was a big brick building that had seen better days. Paint was peeling off the walls, and some windows were boarded up. A large sign in front said, "Building for sale." Marcus had walked past this building every day on his way home from school. Today was different. Today the front door was open. Marcus stopped and looked at the building. He had always wondered what was inside. His mother, Sarah, had told him stories about the community center. Years ago, it was full of life. Children played games there. Adults took classes. Families came for events. But that was before Marcus was born. Now it was empty and forgotten. A man in work clothes came out of the building. He was carrying a toolbox and looked tired. Marcus walked closer to the open door. The man noticed him. "Hey kid, you can't go in there," the man said. "Building's not safe. We're getting it ready for the new owners." Marcus nodded but didn't move away. "What's going to happen to it?" he asked. The man wiped sweat from his face. "They're tearing it down next month. Going to build new apartments." He picked up his toolbox and walked to his truck. "Stay out of there, okay? Don't want you getting hurt." Marcus watched the truck drive away. He looked at the open door again. The building was quiet and dark inside. He knew he shouldn't go in, but something pulled him forward. He took a quick look around the street. No one was watching. Marcus stepped through the door. The inside of the community center was bigger than he thought. Dust covered everything. Old chairs were stacked against the walls. Sunlight came through dirty windows, making long shadows on the floor. Marcus walked slowly through the main room. His footsteps echoed in the empty space. He found a hallway that led to other rooms. Most were empty or filled with broken furniture. At the end of the hall, Marcus saw stairs going down to the basement. The stairs were dark, but he could see a little light coming from below. His heart beat faster as he walked down the old wooden steps. The basement was cooler than upstairs. It smelled like old wood and dampness. Boxes and old equipment were scattered around. In the far corner, something caught Marcus's eye. It was big and dark, covered with a dirty sheet. Marcus walked over and carefully pulled the sheet away. What he saw made him gasp. It was a piano. An old upright piano with dark wood that was scratched and faded. Some of the keys were missing. Others were yellow with age. The bench in front was cracked, and one leg was shorter than the others. But to Marcus, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Marcus had always loved music. When he was little, he would dance to songs on the radio. He would tap out rhythms with his fingers on tables and walls. At school, he loved music class, even though they only had it once a week. The teacher, Mrs. Garcia, sometimes let students try the small keyboard in her classroom. Marcus was always good at picking out melodies, even though he had never learned to read music. Now, standing in front of this old piano, Marcus felt something special. His hands reached out and touched the keys. Even though some were missing, he pressed down on a few. The sound was not perfect. Some notes didn't work at all. Others were out of tune. But there was something magical about hearing music come from his fingers. Marcus sat on the broken bench. It wobbled, but it held his weight. He placed his hands on the keyboard like he had seen piano players do on TV. Slowly, he began to press keys and listen to the sounds they made. He tried to remember songs he knew and pick them out on the piano. Time seemed to stop as Marcus played. He forgot about the cold basement. He forgot about the broken building around him. He forgot about everything except the music. Even with missing keys and bad tuning, the piano seemed to sing to him. He found he could make beautiful sounds if he was careful about which keys he pressed. When Marcus finally looked up, the light from the small basement window had changed. The sun was lower in the sky. He realized he had been in the basement for over an hour. His mother would be worried if he was late for dinner. Marcus stood up and looked at the piano one more time. He carefully put the sheet back over it like tucking a friend into bed. As he walked up the stairs, his mind was full of the music he had just made. He had never felt anything like this before. Outside, the street was quiet. Marcus walked home quickly, thinking about the piano. When he got to his apartment, his mother was cooking dinner in their small kitchen. Sarah Thompson worked 2 jobs to pay rent and buy food for them. She cleaned offices at night and worked at a grocery store during the day. She was always tired, but she always smiled when Marcus came home. "You're a little late today," Sarah said, stirring something in a pot. "Everything okay at school?" Marcus wanted to tell her about the piano. He wanted to share his excitement, but something held him back. He wasn't supposed to be in the old building, and he knew his mother had enough worries without him talking about impossible dreams. "Everything's fine, Mom," Marcus said, just walked home slowly. That night, Marcus lay in his bed and thought about the piano. He could still hear the music in his head. He moved his fingers like he was playing keys, remembering how it felt to make those sounds. For the first time in his life, Marcus knew exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to learn to play piano, but he also knew it was impossible. Piano lessons cost money they didn't have. Real pianos were expensive. Even keyboards cost more than his family could afford. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to push the dream away, but the music stayed in his head, playing softly as he fell asleep. The next day at school, Marcus could barely focus on his lessons. His mind kept drifting back to the piano in the basement. During math class, he tapped out melodies on his desk with his pencils. Mrs. Patterson, his teacher, gave him a warning look, but Marcus couldn't help himself. The music was stuck in his head. At lunch, Marcus sat with his usual group of friends. There was Tommy, who lived in the same apartment building, and Lisa, who was in his science class. They were talking about the new video game that Tommy got for his birthday. Marcus wanted to join the conversation, but he kept thinking about piano keys instead of game controls. "Marcus, you're being weird today," Lisa said, waving her hand in front of his face. "Are you even listening?" "Sorry," Marcus said, shaking his head. "I was just thinking about something." "About what?" Tommy asked, taking a bite of his sandwich. Marcus almost told them about the piano. But then he imagined how they would react. They would probably laugh. Tommy was always making jokes about things he thought were dumb, and piano music wasn't something kids in their neighborhood usually cared about. "Nothing important," Marcus said. "Just homework stuff." After school, Marcus rushed to the community center. He looked around to make sure no one was watching, then slipped inside through the open door. The building was quiet, just like the day before. Marcus went straight to the basement stairs and hurried down to the piano. This time he spent 2 hours playing. He tried to remember more songs and figure out how to play them. Some keys still didn't work, but Marcus learned to work around them. He discovered that he could make different sounds by pressing the keys harder or softer. When he pressed gently, the notes were quiet and sweet. When he pressed firmly, they were strong and bold. Marcus also found that some keys sounded good together, while others sounded terrible. He began to experiment, trying different combinations. Sometimes he would find a group of keys that made a beautiful sound when played together. Other times he would accidentally hit keys that made him cringe. This became Marcus's daily routine. Every day after school, he would go to the community center and play the old piano. He told his mother he was staying after school for extra help with homework. He felt bad about lying, but he didn't know how else to explain where he was going. One afternoon, while Marcus was playing, he heard footsteps on the stairs. His heart jumped into his throat. Someone was coming down to the basement. Marcus quickly pulled the sheet over the piano and tried to look like he was just exploring. A man appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Marcus recognized him as Mr. Rodriguez, the building's caretaker. He was older, with gray hair and tired eyes. Mr. Rodriguez looked surprised to see Marcus. "What are you doing down here, kid?" Mr. Rodriguez asked. His voice wasn't angry, but it was serious. Marcus's mind raced. He couldn't think of a good excuse for being in the basement. "I was just looking around," he said quietly. Mr. Rodriguez walked closer. He noticed that the sheet over the piano was not quite the way he had left it. He pulled the sheet back and saw the old piano. Then he looked at Marcus with understanding. "You've been playing this old thing?" Mr. Rodriguez asked. Marcus nodded, expecting to get in trouble. Instead, Mr. Rodriguez sat down on a nearby box and sighed. "I should tell you to leave and not come back," Mr. Rodriguez said. "This building isn't safe and you're not supposed to be here." Marcus felt his heart sink. This was it. His secret was discovered and now he would lose the piano. But Mr. Rodriguez continued talking. "However, I've been hearing music coming from down here for the past week. At first I thought someone had left a radio on, But then I realized it was coming from this old piano. Someone was actually playing it. Marcus stayed quiet, not sure what to say. I haven't heard this piano played in 15 years, Mr. Rodriguez said, running his hand along the piano's edge. It used to be upstairs in the main room. Kids took lessons on it. There were recitals and concerts. This place was full of music back then. What happened? Marcus asked softly. Budget cuts, Mr. Rodriguez said with a sad smile. The city couldn't afford to keep the programs running. People stopped coming. Eventually, we moved the piano down here and covered it up. I thought it would never be played again. Mr. Rodriguez looked at Marcus carefully. How long have you been taking piano lessons? I haven't, Marcus admitted. I'm teaching myself. Mr. Rodriguez's eyebrows went up in surprise. You're teaching yourself how? Marcus told him about watching videos at the library and trying to figure out songs by ear. He explained how he had always loved music but never had a chance to learn an instrument. Well, I'll be, Mr. Rodriguez said. You've got natural talent, kid. I can tell just from what I heard upstairs. Marcus felt a warm feeling in his chest. No one had ever told him he was good at anything before. But here's the problem, Mr. Rodriguez continued. This building is being torn down in 3 weeks. After that, this piano will be gone, probably thrown in a dumpster. Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. 3 weeks. That was no time at all. I wish I could help you, Mr. Rodriguez said, but I don't have anywhere else to put this piano. And even if I did, it needs a lot of work to sound right again. That evening, Marcus walked home feeling worse than he had in a long time. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, his piano would be gone and his music dreams would be over before they really started. At dinner, his mother noticed that Marcus was quiet and sad. Rough day at school? Sarah asked, serving him a plate of rice and beans. Marcus almost told her everything right then. He wanted to share his sadness and maybe ask for her help. But when he looked at his mother's tired face and saw the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, he knew he couldn't add another worry to her life. Just tired, Marcus said. That night, Marcus lay in bed and made a decision. He would use every minute of the next 3 weeks to learn as much as he could. Even if the piano was taken away, at least he would have those memories, and maybe somehow he would find another way to keep making music. The next day at school, Marcus's friend Tommy noticed he was acting strange again. Seriously, Marcus, what's going on with you? Tommy asked during gym class. You've been weird for like a week now. I told you it's nothing, Marcus said, but his voice sounded frustrated. Come on, man. We're friends. You can tell me. Marcus stopped running and looked at Tommy. Maybe it would help to tell someone. If I tell you something, do you promise not to laugh? Marcus asked. I promise, Tommy said, though he looked curious and a little worried. Marcus took a deep breath. I've been learning to play piano. Tommy's face went through several expressions. First confusion, then surprise, then something that looked like he was trying not to smile. Piano? Tommy repeated. Yeah. There's this old piano in the community center, and I've been teaching myself to play it. Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then he started to grin. Piano? Like classical music and stuff? Marcus felt his face get hot. Not just classical. All kinds of music. Dude, that's so random, Tommy said, and then he started to laugh. Marcus, the piano player. That's hilarious. Marcus felt like he had made a mistake telling Tommy. It's not funny, he said. Oh, come on, Tommy said, still grinning. You have to admit it's pretty weird. I mean, who plays piano in our neighborhood? Marcus didn't answer. He just started running again, leaving Tommy behind. But Tommy wasn't done. By the end of the day, he had told several other kids about Marcus and the piano. Soon Marcus was hearing whispers and giggles in the hallways. Someone had started calling him Piano Boy, and the name was spreading. As Marcus walked home that day, he heard Tommy and some other kids behind him. Hey, Piano Boy, Tommy called out. Are you going to give us a concert? The other kids laughed. Marcus walked faster, his face burning with embarrassment. Maybe he'll play at the talent show. Another kid shouted. We can finally have some fancy music. More laughter followed Marcus all the way home. When he got to his apartment, he went straight to his room and closed the door. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Now everyone at school thought he was weird. His secret was out and people were making fun of him. In 3 weeks, the piano would be gone anyway. Maybe Tommy was right. Maybe piano was stupid for someone like him. But even as Marcus thought these things, he could still hear music in his head. The piano was calling to him, and he knew he would go back tomorrow. Even if everyone laughed at him, even if the piano would soon be destroyed, he couldn't give up the one thing that made him feel truly alive. The teasing at school got worse over the next few days. Kids would hum fancy classical music when Marcus walked by. Someone drew a picture of a piano on his locker with Piano Boys Concert Hall written underneath. During lunch, a group of kids started clapping their hands and pretending to play air piano while looking at Marcus. Marcus tried to ignore them, but it hurt. He had never been popular at school, but he had never been picked on either. Now he felt like everyone was watching him and laughing. He began to wonder if he should just stop playing the piano altogether. But every afternoon, Marcus still found himself walking to the community center. The music was too important to him. When he sat at the old piano and pressed the keys, everything else disappeared. The teasing, the broken building, the sadness at home, it all went away when he played. One Thursday evening, Marcus was playing a sad song he had made up himself. The melody was slow and beautiful, expressing all the lonely feelings he carried inside. He didn't notice the woman standing at the bottom of the basement stairs until she cleared her throat. Marcus jumped and spun around on the piano bench. A small, elderly woman was watching him. She had white hair pulled back in a neat bun and wore a simple blue dress. Her eyes were kind but serious. "Don't stop playing," the woman said gently. That was beautiful. Marcus's heart was racing. "I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to be here. I'll leave right now." "Wait," the woman said, raising her hand. "I'm not here to get you in trouble. My name is Eleanor Hartwell. I was walking by and heard piano music. I had to come see who was playing." Marcus stayed on the bench but didn't say anything. He didn't know if he should trust this stranger. Mrs. Hartwell walked closer to the piano. "How long have you been playing?" "About 2 weeks," Marcus said quietly. "2 weeks?" Mrs. Hartwell looked surprised. "Who taught you that piece you were just playing?" "Nobody, I made it up." Mrs. Hartwell's eyes widened. "You composed that yourself? In just 2 weeks of playing?" Marcus nodded, not understanding why she seemed so shocked. Mrs. Hartwell sat down on the box where Mr. Rodriguez had sat before. "Marcus, is it? I heard someone call you that upstairs." "Yes, ma'am." "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I taught piano for 40 years before I retired. I've heard thousands of students play. What I just heard from you is very special." Marcus felt that warm feeling in his chest again, but he was also confused. "Special how?" "You have what we call a natural ear for music. That means you can hear how music should sound, even without training. Most people have to study for years to be able to create melodies like the one you just played." Mrs. Hartwell looked around the basement and then back at the piano. "This old instrument is in terrible shape. Half the keys don't work properly, and it's completely out of tune. But somehow you're making beautiful music anyway." Marcus felt brave enough to ask a question. "Are you really a piano teacher?" "I was," Mrs. Hartwell said with a smile. "I taught at Jefferson Elementary for 30 years, and then I gave private lessons from my home for another 10 years. I only stopped 2 years ago when my arthritis got too bad. Do you think—" Marcus started, then stopped. He was afraid to ask what he really wanted to know. "Do I think what, dear? Do you think I could ever be really good at piano? Like good enough to play real songs?" Mrs. Hartwell was quiet for a moment, studying Marcus's face. "Marcus, with proper instruction and practice, I think you could be much more than just good. I think you could be exceptional." Marcus felt like his heart might burst. No one had ever said anything like that about him before. "But," Mrs. Hartwell continued, "you need proper training, and you need a piano that actually works." Marcus's excitement faded quickly. "I can't afford lessons, and this piano's going to be thrown away in 2 weeks anyway." "What do you mean, thrown away?" Marcus explained about the building being torn down and the piano being destroyed. He told her about his mother's 2 jobs and how they barely had enough money for rent and food. Mrs. Hartwell listened carefully to everything Marcus said. When he finished, she sat quietly for a long time, thinking. "Marcus," she said finally, "would you be willing to meet me here tomorrow evening? Same time? Why? I have an idea. But I need to think about it more tonight." Marcus agreed, though he wasn't sure what to expect. Mrs. Hartwell stood up to leave, then turned back. "In the meantime, I want you to practice something for me. Try to play Happy Birthday on this piano. Use whatever keys work and try to make it sound right. Can you do that?" I think so, Marcus said. Good. I'll see you tomorrow. After Mrs. Hartwell left, Marcus spent another hour trying to figure out Happy Birthday on the broken piano. It was harder than he thought because some of the keys he needed were missing or broken, but he kept trying different combinations until he found a way to make it work. The next day at school was particularly bad. Someone had written "Piano Boy Plays Here" on the bathroom wall with an arrow pointing to one of the toilets. During art class, a kid named Jake kept pretending to play piano on his desk and making exaggerated faces like he was a fancy musician. "Cut it out, Jake," Marcus said finally. "What's wrong, piano boy?" Jake said loudly so other kids would hear. "Don't you like music?" The teacher, Mr. Foster, looked up from his desk. "Is there a problem over there?" "No problem," Jake said innocently. "I was just asking Marcus about his piano playing." Mr. Foster looked confused, but he went back to his work. Jake grinned at Marcus and whispered, "Maybe you can play us a funeral song when they tear down your concert hall." Marcus felt anger burning in his chest, but he didn't say anything. He just counted the minutes until school was over. That evening, Marcus arrived at the community center early. He played Happy Birthday several times, trying to make it sound as good as possible on the broken piano. When Mrs. Hartwell arrived, she had a large bag with her. "Let me hear Happy Birthday," she said. Marcus played the song using the key combinations he had figured out. When he finished, Mrs. Hartwell was smiling. "Excellent. You found creative ways around the broken keys. That shows real musical intelligence." She opened her bag and pulled out several books. "These are beginner piano method books. I also brought some sheet music for simple songs." Marcus stared at the books. They looked expensive and professional. "I can't pay for those," he said. "You don't have to. They're gifts." Mrs. Hartwell sat down next to Marcus on the piano bench. "Now let me show you how to read music." For the next hour, Mrs. Hartwell taught Marcus about musical notes and how they appeared on paper. She showed him how the lines and spaces on the staff corresponded to different keys on the piano. Marcus was amazed to discover that music could be written down like a language. "Each note has a name," Mrs. Hartwell explained, pointing to the keys. "These are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, then they repeat." Marcus practiced finding the notes she named. Even with the broken keys, he could still learn where each note was supposed to be. "Mrs. Hartwell," Marcus said, "why are you helping me?" The elderly woman smiled sadly. "Because 40 years ago I was a little girl who loved music but came from a family that couldn't afford lessons. A kind teacher helped me for free and it changed my entire life. I became a teacher because I wanted to help other children the way she helped me. What happened to that teacher? She died many years ago. But before she did, she made me promise to pass on her kindness to another child who needed it. I've been waiting for the right child to come along." Mrs. Hartwell looked at Marcus seriously. "I believe you are that child, Marcus. You have a gift that shouldn't be wasted." Marcus felt tears in his eyes, but they were happy tears. For the first time since the teasing started, he felt hope again. "Now," Mrs. Hartwell said, "we have 2 weeks before this piano disappears. I want to teach you as much as possible in that time. Are you willing to work hard?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said without hesitation. "Good. Then let's begin." Mrs. Hartwell opened one of the books and began teaching Marcus his first real piano lesson. Outside, the sun was setting, but in the basement of the old community center, something wonderful was beginning. Marcus had found his first true teacher and supporter. Even though kids at school still called him Piano Boy as a joke, Marcus was starting to feel proud of that name. Maybe being Piano Boy wasn't such a bad thing after all. For 10 days, Marcus met Mrs. Hartwell every evening in the basement. She taught him how to read music, how to position his hands correctly, and how to play simple songs from the method books. Even with the broken piano, Marcus learned quickly. Mrs. Hartwell was amazed at how fast he picked up new concepts. "You're learning in days what takes most students weeks," she told him one evening. "Your natural ability is remarkable." Marcus felt proud and excited. For the first time in his life, he was truly good at something. At school, the teasing had actually gotten a little better. Some kids seemed to be getting bored with making fun of him. Tommy still called him Piano Boy sometimes, but even he seemed less interested in the joke. But Marcus's happiness was about to be shattered. On a cold November morning, Marcus arrived at school to find everyone talking about the same thing. The community center was being torn down that very day. Construction crews had arrived early and were already loading equipment. "Hey, Piano Boy," Jake called out when he saw Marcus. "Looks like your concert hall is closing today." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. They were supposed to have 4 more days. Mrs. Hartwell had promised to teach him a special song that he could play for his mother. Now it was all over. Marcus couldn't concentrate on anything at school that day. During math class, he kept looking out the window, trying to see if he could spot the community center in the distance. At lunch, he barely ate anything. His stomach was twisted in knots. After school, Marcus ran to the community center instead of walking. When he got there, his worst fears came true. There were bulldozers and trucks everywhere. Men in hard hats were carrying things out of the building. A large dumpster sat in the parking lot, already half full of broken furniture and debris. Marcus saw Mr. Rodriguez directing the workers. He ran over to him. "Mr. Rodriguez, what about the piano?" Mr. Rodriguez looked sad when he saw Marcus. "I'm sorry, kid. The new owners wanted to start demolition today instead of next week. Everything has to come out, but the piano, where is it?" Mr. Rodriguez pointed to the dumpster. "I'm sorry, Marcus. It was too heavy and broken to save. We had to throw it away this morning." Marcus felt like the world was ending. He ran to the dumpster and looked inside. There, mixed in with broken chairs and old boxes, he could see pieces of his beloved piano. The keys were scattered. The wooden frame was cracked and splintered. His beautiful broken piano was now just garbage. Tears streamed down Marcus's face. He didn't care that construction workers were watching him cry. His music was gone. His secret place was gone. His dreams were destroyed. "Hey, you okay, kid?" one of the workers asked. Marcus couldn't answer. He just turned and ran home as fast as he could. When Marcus got to his apartment, his mother was getting ready for her evening job at the office building. She took one look at his tear-stained face and knew something was terribly wrong. "Marcus, what happened?" Sarah asked, kneeling down to his level. Marcus couldn't hold it in anymore. Through his sobs, he told his mother everything. About finding the piano, about learning to play, about Mrs. Hartwell, and about the piano being destroyed today. Sarah listened to every word without interrupting. When Marcus finished his story, Sarah pulled him into a tight hug. "Oh, honey," she said softly.
"Why didn't you tell me about this before?"
"Because I knew we couldn't afford piano lessons," Marcus cried. "And I didn't want you to worry about another thing you couldn't give me." Sarah's own eyes filled with tears. She had been working so hard to provide for Marcus that she hadn't realized he had found something he was passionate about. "Marcus, look at me," Sarah said, holding his face in her hands. "You should never hide your dreams from me. Yes, money is tight, but we're a team. We figure things out together." "It doesn't matter now," Marcus said. "The piano is gone. Mrs. Hartwell won't have anywhere to teach me." "It's all over," Sarah thought for a moment. "What if we tried to find Mrs. Hartwell? Maybe she has ideas about what to do next." "I don't know where she lives," Marcus said. "I only ever saw her at the community center." That evening, Marcus felt emptier than he ever had before. He tried to do his homework, but he couldn't focus. He kept thinking about the broken pieces of piano in the dumpster. All those hours of practice, all those beautiful melodies he had learned to play. It all felt like a waste now. Sarah had to go to work. But before she left, she sat with Marcus on his bed. "I want you to know how proud I am of you," she said. "You found something you loved and you worked hard at it. That's not a waste, no matter what happens next." "But I'll never be able to play piano again," Marcus said. "You don't know that for sure. Sometimes when one door closes, another one opens. We just have to keep looking for it." After his mother left for work, Marcus lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling. He tried to remember the songs Mrs. Hartwell had taught him, but without a piano to play them on, the music felt far away and unreal. The next few days were the worst Marcus had experienced in a long time. At school, some kids were still making jokes about the community center being torn down. Jake made a big show of pretending to be sad about Piano Boy's concert hall being destroyed. But Marcus didn't even have the energy to be angry anymore. Mrs. Garcia, his music teacher, noticed that Marcus seemed different during their weekly music class. "Marcus, you usually participate more in music class," she said after the other students had left. "Is everything okay?" Marcus almost told her about the piano, but he just shrugged instead. "I'm fine. Are you sure? You look like you've lost your best friend." In a way, Marcus thought that was exactly what had happened. The piano had been his best friend, and now it was gone. That weekend, Marcus walked past the community center site. The building was completely gone. In its place was just an empty lot with piles of rubble. Even the dumpster had been taken away. It was like the piano had never existed at all. As Marcus stood looking at the empty lot, he heard someone calling his name. He turned around and saw Mrs. Hartwell walking toward him. She looked as sad as he felt. "I heard what happened," she said when she reached him. "I came by Thursday evening and found the building was already being torn down. I was heartbroken." "Me too," Marcus said quietly. Mrs. Hartwell looked at the empty lot, then back at Marcus. "I want you to know that the time we spent together wasn't wasted. You learned a lot in those 10 days. But now I can't practice anymore. I'll forget everything you taught me." "No, you won't," Mrs. Hartwell said firmly. "Music isn't just about the instrument. It's about understanding and feeling. That knowledge is inside you now, and it will always be there." Marcus wanted to believe her, but it was hard when he felt so hopeless. "Marcus," Mrs. Hartwell said, "I've been thinking about your situation. I may have an idea, but I need to make some phone calls first. Are you willing to trust me a little longer?" Marcus looked at the kind old woman who had given him so much in such a short time. Even though his heart was broken, he nodded. "Good," Mrs. Hartwell said. "Give me your address. I'll contact you in a few days." Marcus wrote his address on a piece of paper from his backpack. Mrs. Hartwell took it and smiled. "Don't give up on music, Marcus. Sometimes the darkest moments come right before something wonderful happens." As Mrs. Hartwell walked away, Marcus wanted to believe her words, but standing in front of the empty lot where his dreams had been buried under rubble, hope felt impossible to find. That night, Marcus lay in bed and tried to remember the feeling of pressing piano keys. He moved his fingers like he was playing, but without the sound it felt hollow and sad. He wondered if he would ever make music again, or if this brief taste of his dreams was all he would ever have. Outside his window, the city hummed with its usual nighttime sounds. But for Marcus, the world felt silent and empty, like a song with all the notes taken away. 3 days passed without any word from Mrs. Hartwell. Marcus went through the motions of his daily routine, but everything felt gray and empty. At school, he sat quietly in the back of his classes. At home, he did his homework without really thinking about it. His mother watched him with worried eyes but gave him space to grieve. On Wednesday evening, there was a knock at the apartment door. Sarah answered it and found Mrs. Hartwell standing in the hallway holding a small envelope. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Eleanor Hartwell. I believe Marcus has mentioned me." Sarah's eyes widened. This was the woman Marcus had told her about, his secret piano teacher. "Please come in," Sarah said. "Marcus, Mrs. Hartwell is here." Marcus came out of his room, surprised and a little hopeful. Mrs. Hartwell sat down on their small couch and looked at both Marcus and his mother. "I told Marcus I might have an idea, and I do, but it's complicated and I need both of you to hear it." Sarah sat down next to Marcus and they both waited for Mrs. Hartwell to continue. "I have a friend named Dr. Patricia Williams. She works at the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and she runs their youth program for talented children from low-income families. Yesterday I called her and told her about Marcus." Marcus felt his heart start to beat faster. "Dr. Williams wants to meet Marcus. If she thinks he has enough talent, she might offer him a spot in the youth program. It would include free lessons, access to practice pianos, and the chance to perform with other young musicians." Sarah looked stunned. "That sounds incredible, but there's a catch," Mrs. Hartwell said. "Marcus would have to audition. He would need to play a piece on a real piano in front of several judges. They would evaluate his talent and potential." Marcus felt excitement and terror at the same time. "When would the audition be?" "Next Friday evening." "At the Steinberg Academy of Music downtown." Sarah frowned. "Mrs. Hartwell, Marcus has only been playing for a few weeks. And on a broken piano. How could he possibly be ready for a real audition so soon?" Mrs. Hartwell smiled. "That's where my plan comes in. I've arranged for Marcus to practice on my piano at home for the next week. Every day after school, I'll give him intensive lessons to prepare him for the audition." "You have a piano?" Marcus asked. "A beautiful baby grand that I've barely touched since I retired. It's been waiting for the right student to bring it back to life." Marcus looked at his mother. Sarah looked overwhelmed by everything she was hearing. "Mrs. Hartwell, this is incredibly generous," Sarah said. "But I'm worried. What if Marcus isn't ready? What if he fails the audition? I don't want him to be devastated again." Mrs. Hartwell nodded understandingly. "There's definitely a risk. but Marcus has more natural talent than anyone I've taught in 40 years. With intensive preparation, I believe he has a real chance. What would I have to play at the audition? Marcus asked. A piece of your choice plus some scales and sight reading. I've brought sheet music for a beautiful piece called Für Elise by Beethoven. It's challenging but not too difficult for someone with your abilities. Marcus had heard of Beethoven but had never tried to play any classical music. The most important thing, Mrs. Hartwell continued, is that you would be playing on a perfect piano, in tune and with all keys working. Your talent will finally have a proper instrument to shine through. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, she looked at Marcus. What do you want to do, honey? It's your choice. Marcus thought about everything that had happened. The broken piano was gone. He had felt hopeless for days. But now suddenly there was a new possibility. It was scary and uncertain, but it was a chance. I want to try, Marcus said quietly. Mrs. Hartwell smiled. Then we start tomorrow. Marcus, can you come to my house right after school? The next day, Marcus could barely concentrate on his classes. His mind was racing with thoughts about the audition and Mrs. Hartwell's piano. When the school bell finally rang, he practically ran out of the building. Mrs. Hartwell lived in a small but neat house about 15 minutes from Marcus's apartment. When she opened the front door, Marcus could smell something that reminded him of his grandmother's house, warm and welcoming. Come in, dear, Mrs. Hartwell said. The piano is in the living room. Marcus followed her through the house and stopped dead when he saw the piano. It was the most beautiful instrument he had ever seen. The wood was dark and polished, and the keys were perfectly white and clean. Sunlight from the window made the whole piano seem to glow. Go ahead, Mrs. Hartwell said. Try it. Marcus approached the piano like it was something sacred. He sat down on the bench, which was perfectly stable and the right height. He placed his hands on the keys and pressed down gently. The sound that came out was incredible. Every note was clear and pure. The tone was rich and beautiful. After weeks of playing the broken piano, this felt like magic. Oh, wow, Marcus whispered. This is what you've been missing, Mrs. Hartwell said. Now let me hear you play something you know. Marcus played Happy Birthday, the first song Mrs. Hartwell had taught him. On this piano, it sounded like a completely different song. Every note rang out clearly, and Marcus could hear harmonies and subtleties that had been impossible on the broken piano. When he finished, Mrs. Hartwell was beaming. Perfect. Now let's begin your real education. For the next 2 hours, Mrs. Hartwell taught Marcus more about piano technique than he had learned in all his previous practice combined. She showed him how to use proper finger positions, how to make his playing more expressive, and how to control the volume and tone of each note. Then she introduced him to Für Elise. This piece tells a story, Mrs. Hartwell explained. Beethoven wrote it for a woman named Elise. The beginning is gentle and romantic, like he's thinking about her. Then it becomes more passionate and dramatic. She played the piece for Marcus, and he was amazed by its beauty. The melody was sad and hopeful at the same time. Do you think I can really learn this in a week? Marcus asked. With your talent and my teaching? Absolutely. But you'll need to practice every day. That evening, Marcus went home feeling more excited than he had since the piano was destroyed. His mother was waiting for him with dinner. How did it go? Sarah asked. Marcus told her about Mrs. Hartwell's beautiful piano and the piece he was learning. Sarah listened with a mixture of pride and worry. Marcus, I want you to know something, she said. No matter what happens at this audition, I'm proud of you for trying. You're braver than I was at your age. What do you mean? Sarah was quiet for a moment. When I was young, I wanted to be a teacher. But my family didn't have money for college, and I was too scared to try for scholarships. I gave up on my dream before I even tried to pursue it. Marcus had never heard this story before. I don't want you to make the same mistake I did, Sarah continued. So even though this audition scares me, I'm glad you're going for it. The next day at school, Marcus felt different. He still got some teasing from kids like Jake, but it didn't bother him as much. He had a secret now, a real chance at something amazing. When Jake made jokes about Piano Boy, Marcus just smiled and thought about the beautiful music he was learning to play. After school, Marcus went straight to Mrs. Hartwell's house for his second lesson. She had him work on the first section of Für Elise over and over until he could play it smoothly. Remember, she said, this isn't just about hitting the right notes. It's about telling Beethoven's story. Feel the emotion in the music. Marcus tried to imagine what Beethoven was feeling when he wrote the piece. As he played, he thought about love and loss, hope and sadness. Suddenly, the music became more than just notes. It became a language for feelings he didn't have words for. By the end of the week, Marcus could play the entire piece. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. Mrs. Hartwell was amazed at his progress. "In 6 days, you've learned what takes most students months," she told him. "You're ready for this audition, Marcus." But as Friday evening approached, Marcus felt more and more nervous. He had never played for strangers before. He had never even been to a fancy music academy. What if he froze up? What if he made mistakes? What if the judges thought he wasn't good enough? The night before the audition, Marcus lay in bed with his stomach in knots. Tomorrow his future would be decided. Either he would earn a spot in the youth program and get to continue making music, or he would fail and have to give up his dreams forever. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to calm himself by thinking about the music. In his mind, he played Für Elise over and over, remembering every note and every emotion. Tomorrow, he would find out if his talent was real enough to change his life. Friday evening arrived faster than Marcus wanted. All day at school, he felt sick to his stomach. He could barely eat lunch, and during his classes, he kept thinking about the audition. His hands felt sweaty when he imagined sitting at the piano in front of the judges. Tommy noticed that Marcus seemed even more nervous than usual. "You okay, piano boy?" Tommy asked, but his voice wasn't mean this time. He actually sounded concerned. "I have an audition tonight," Marcus said without thinking. "An audition? For what?" Marcus realized he had said too much, but it was too late now. "For a music program at the symphony?" Tommy's eyes went wide. "Seriously? That's actually pretty cool." Marcus was surprised. Tommy had been making fun of his piano playing for weeks, but now he seemed impressed. "Good luck, man," Tommy said. "I hope you get in." After school, Marcus went home to change clothes. His mother had borrowed a nice shirt and tie from their neighbor for the audition. Marcus looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the nervous boy staring back at him. Mrs. Hartwell picked up Marcus and his mother in her old car. As they drove downtown to the Steinberg Academy, Marcus watched the city go by through the window. The buildings got taller and fancier as they got closer to the music district. "Remember," Mrs. Hartwell said from the front seat, "you belong there just as much as anyone else. Your talent is real, and you've worked hard." The Steinberg Academy was the most beautiful building Marcus had ever seen. It was made of white stone with tall columns and big windows. Students were walking in and out carrying instrument cases. Marcus felt like he was entering a different world. Inside, the academy was even more impressive. The walls were lined with pictures of famous musicians. The floors were polished marble and everything seemed to shine. Marcus had never been anywhere so fancy. Mrs. Hartwell led them to a waiting area where other young musicians sat with their parents. Marcus looked around and felt his confidence disappear. All the other kids were dressed in expensive clothes. They had professional instrument cases and looked like they had been taking lessons their whole lives. A girl about Marcus's age was practicing violin in the corner. The music she played was incredibly complex and beautiful. A boy near the window was reading sheet music that looked much harder than anything Marcus had ever seen. Maybe this was a mistake, Marcus whispered to his mother. Sarah squeezed his hand. "You deserve to be here just as much as anyone else." But Marcus wasn't so sure. These kids looked like real musicians. He felt like a fraud. A woman in a business suit came into the waiting area. "Marcus Thompson?" Marcus's heart jumped. It was time. "I'm Dr. Patricia Williams," the woman said with a smile. "Are you ready?" Marcus nodded, even though he didn't feel ready at all. Dr. Williams led Marcus, his mother, and Mrs. Hartwell down a long hallway to a large room with a beautiful grand piano in the center. 3 people sat at a table with papers and pens. They looked serious and professional. "These are our other judges," Dr. Williams explained. "Mr. Chen teaches piano here at the academy. Mrs. Rodriguez is our youth program coordinator. And Mr. Jackson is a pianist with the Detroit Symphony." Marcus felt dizzy. These people were real professional musicians, and they were going to judge his playing. The piano in the audition room was even nicer than Mrs. Hartwell's. It was black and shiny, and Marcus could see his reflection in the polished surface. "Take a seat at the piano," Dr. Williams said. "Play whatever you've prepared for us." Marcus sat down on the bench and placed his hands on the keys. They felt cold under his fingers. He looked back at the judges, who were all watching him carefully. His mother and Mrs. Hartwell sat in chairs along the wall. Marcus tried to start playing Für Elise, but his hands were shaking so badly that he hit the wrong keys. The sound that came out was terrible. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "Can I start over?" "Of course," Dr. Williams said kindly. "Take your time." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to calm down. He thought about Mrs. Hartwell's living room, where he had practiced this piece dozens of times. He thought about the story behind the music, Beethoven thinking about someone he loved. But when he opened his eyes and saw the judges watching him, his nerves came back even stronger. He started the piece again, but his playing was stiff and scared. He made several mistakes and had to stop twice to correct himself. When he finished, the room was quiet. Marcus felt like he had failed completely. The judges were writing notes on their papers, but their faces didn't show what they were thinking. "Thank you, Marcus," Dr. Williams said. "Now I'd like you to play some scales for us." Marcus played the scales Mrs. Hartwell had taught him, but even those felt clumsy and wrong. His fingers stumbled over keys that he knew perfectly well. And finally, Dr. Williams said, "I'm going to play a short melody, and I want you to play it back to me." This was the sight-reading test that Mrs. Hartwell had warned him about. Dr. Williams played a simple tune on the piano. Marcus listened carefully and tried to repeat it, but he was so nervous that he couldn't concentrate properly. He got most of the notes right, but the rhythm was off. When the audition was over, Marcus felt horrible. He knew he had played much worse than he was capable of. All those hours of practice with Mrs. Hartwell had been wasted because he couldn't control his nerves. "Thank you, Marcus," Dr. Williams said. "We'll be in touch within a few days with our decision." As they walked back to the car, nobody said much. Marcus felt like crying, but he held it in. He had blown his chance and he knew it. "I'm sorry," Marcus said when they got in the car. "I played terribly." "You were nervous," Mrs. Hartwell said. "That's completely normal. But I made so many mistakes. I know that piece perfectly, but I couldn't play it right when it mattered." Sarah turned around from the front seat. "Marcus, you tried something very brave tonight. Not many kids your age would have the courage to audition for something like this." But Marcus didn't feel brave. He felt like a failure. That weekend was the longest of Marcus's life. He kept thinking about the audition and all the mistakes he had made. He imagined the judges laughing about the kid who thought he could play piano after only a few weeks of lessons. On Monday at school, Marcus felt back to his old self, quiet and invisible. When Tommy asked him how the audition went, Marcus just shrugged and said he didn't know yet. "I'm sure you did fine," Tommy said. "You're actually pretty cool for knowing how to play piano." Marcus was surprised by Tommy's words, but he didn't feel very cool. He felt like he had wasted everyone's time. Tuesday evening, Mrs. Hartwell called. Marcus's heart pounded as his mother answered the phone. "It's for you," Sarah said, handing Marcus the phone. "Hello?" Marcus said nervously. "Marcus, it's Mrs. Hartwell. Dr. Williams just called me." Marcus held his breath, waiting for the bad news. "Marcus," Mrs. Hartwell said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "You got in?" "What?" "You got into the youth program. Dr. Williams said that despite your nerves, they could hear your natural talent clearly. She said you have the most raw musical ability they've seen in years." Marcus felt like the room was spinning. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. She wants to meet with you and your mother this Saturday to discuss the program details." Marcus started crying, but this time they were tears of joy. After all the setbacks and disappointments, his dreams were finally coming true. When he hung up the phone, his mother was waiting with tears in her own eyes. "I'm so proud of you," Sarah said, hugging him tightly. That night, Marcus lay in bed feeling happier than he had ever felt in his life. The broken piano in the basement had led him to Mrs. Hartwell, who had led him to this incredible opportunity. Even though he had been scared and made mistakes during the audition, the judges had seen something special in him. For the first time, Marcus began to believe that maybe he really could become a musician. Maybe all those people who had called him Piano Boy as a joke would someday say it with respect. His journey was just beginning, but Marcus finally felt like he was heading in the right direction. Saturday morning arrived with bright sunshine streaming through Marcus's bedroom window. He woke up feeling excited and nervous about meeting with Dr. Williams to learn about the youth program. His mother had taken the day off from work, which was rare and showed how important this meeting was. Mrs. Hartwell picked them up and drove them back to the beautiful Steinberg Academy. This time, Marcus felt different walking through the front doors. He belonged here now. He was going to be a student. Dr. Williams met them in her office, which was filled with music books and pictures of young musicians. She smiled warmly when she saw Marcus. "Congratulations, Marcus. We're very excited to have you in our program." "Thank you," Marcus said, still hardly believing it was real. Dr. Williams explained how the program worked. Marcus would come to the academy 3 times a week for lessons and practice time. He would have a private teacher, access to practice rooms with excellent pianos, and the chance to perform in recitals with other students. "The program is completely free," Dr. Williams said. "We believe that talent shouldn't be limited by financial circumstances." Sarah looked relieved. Marcus knew she had been worried about hidden costs. "When can I start?" Marcus asked eagerly. "Next Monday. Your teacher will be Mr. Chen, who you met at the audition. He's one of our finest instructors." Dr. Williams gave them a schedule and some music books. "Marcus, you'll be starting with some intermediate pieces. Based on what we heard at your audition, you're ready for more challenging music." The next Monday after school, Marcus took the bus downtown to the academy for his first official lesson. He felt proud carrying his new music books and walking through the halls where serious musicians studied. Mr. Chen was waiting for him in a practice room with a beautiful grand piano. He was a kind man with gentle eyes and a patient manner. "I understand you taught yourself to play on a broken piano," Mr. Chen said. "That shows remarkable determination." For the next hour, Mr. Chen worked with Marcus on proper technique and introduced him to a new piece by Mozart. Marcus was amazed at how much better his playing sounded with proper instruction on a perfect instrument. "You have excellent natural rhythm," Mr. Chen told him, "and your ear for melody is exceptional. We just need to refine your technical skills." Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into his piano studies. He practiced at the academy every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday after school. On other days, Mrs. Hartwell let him practice on her piano at home. The improvement in Marcus's playing was dramatic. With proper instruction and regular practice on good instruments, his talent bloomed like a flower in sunlight. He learned pieces by Bach, Mozart, and Chopin. His fingers became more agile, and his understanding of music grew deeper every day. At school, word began to spread that Marcus was studying at the famous Steinberg Academy. Even kids who had made fun of him before started to look at him with new respect. "Hey, Marcus," Tommy said one day at lunch. "My mom heard you're taking lessons with real professional musicians. Is that true?" "Yeah," Marcus said, feeling proud but trying not to sound boastful. "That's actually really cool," Tommy said. "Maybe you could teach me some piano sometime." Marcus was surprised. Tommy wanting to learn from him was the last thing he had expected. Even Jake, who had been the meanest about the piano teasing, seemed to have changed his attitude. "Sorry I was such a jerk about the piano thing," Jake said after math class one day. "I didn't know you were actually serious about it." Marcus accepted the apology gracefully. He was learning that success was the best response to doubters. After 2 months in the program, Mr. Chen told Marcus he was ready for his first recital. "It's a small performance for families and friends," Mr. Chen explained. "You'll play a piece you've been working on. It's good practice for larger performances later." Marcus was nervous but excited. He had never performed for an audience before, except for the judges at his audition. He chose to play a piece by Bach called Minuet in G major. It was beautiful and challenging, but he had practiced it so many times that he could play it in his sleep. The night of the recital, Marcus's mother came to watch along with Mrs. Hartwell. About 20 other families were there, supporting their young musicians. When it was Marcus's turn, he walked to the piano feeling much more confident than he had during his audition. He sat down, took a deep breath, and began to play. The music flowed from his fingers like water. Every note was clear and expressive. Marcus forgot about the audience and lost himself in the beauty of Bach's composition. When he finished, the applause was warm and enthusiastic. "That was beautiful, Marcus," Dr. Williams said afterward. "You've made remarkable progress." Sarah was crying tears of pride. "I can't believe that's my son up there," she whispered to Mrs. Hartwell. As the months passed, Marcus continued to grow as a musician. He began helping Mr. Chen teach some of the younger students in the program. Marcus discovered that he loved sharing his knowledge with kids who were just starting their musical journeys. One day, a little girl named Emma reminded Marcus of himself when he first found the broken piano. She was shy and came from a family that struggled financially. Marcus took extra time to encourage her and help her with difficult passages. "You're a natural teacher," Mr. Chen told Marcus. "You have a gift for helping others find their musical voices." In the spring, Dr. Williams approached Marcus with an exciting opportunity. "We'd like you to perform a solo piece at our annual fundraising concert," she said. "It's a big event with donors and community leaders. Are you interested?" Marcus felt his heart race with excitement and nervousness. "What would I play?" "Something that shows your unique story and talent. Maybe you could even compose something original." Marcus had been experimenting with writing his own music lately. He had created several short pieces that expressed his feelings about his journey from the broken piano to the academy. "I have an idea," Marcus said. "I could play a piece about finding music in broken places." Dr. Williams smiled. "That sounds perfect." Over the next few weeks, Marcus worked on composing and perfecting his original piece. He called it Broken Keys, Beautiful Dreams. The music began with discordant, broken-sounding notes that represented the old piano in the basement. Gradually, the melody transformed into something beautiful and hopeful, showing how dreams could overcome obstacles. Marcus also began teaching piano to kids in his own neighborhood. He convinced the local community center to let him use their small keyboard for lessons. Every Saturday morning, he taught 5 children whose families couldn't afford formal music education. "You're giving back," Mrs. Hartwell told him proudly. "Just like my teacher did for me and I did for you." Marcus's reputation as a talented young musician began to spread beyond the academy. A local newspaper wrote an article about his journey from the broken piano to the Symphony Youth Program. The headline read, "From Basement to Concert Hall, Local Boys' Musical Dreams Come True." When the article came out, Marcus's whole school was buzzing about it. The principal, Mrs. Anderson, called him to her office. "Marcus, we're very proud of you," she said. "Would you be willing to perform for our school at the next assembly?" Marcus agreed, and the following week he played for Elise for his entire school. The same kids who had once teased him about being piano boy now gave him a standing ovation. After the assembly, many students came up to Marcus with questions about music and piano playing. Some even asked if he could teach them. "How did you get so good so fast?" one girl asked. Marcus thought about everything that had happened: finding the broken piano, meeting Mrs. Hartwell, failing and succeeding at his audition, and all the hours of practice in between. "I think when you find something you really love," Marcus said, "you'll work harder than you ever thought possible." As Marcus's abilities grew, so did his confidence and his dreams. He began to imagine a future where music was not just a hobby, but his career. He dreamed of performing in great concert halls and maybe even composing symphonies, but he never forgot where he started. Every time he sat down at a beautiful piano, Marcus remembered the broken instrument in the basement that had first called to his heart. The boy who had once been mocked as piano boy was now being celebrated as a rising young musician. And the most amazing part was that this was only the beginning of his musical journey. The night of the big fundraising concert arrived in late spring. Marcus was now 16 years old, and he had been part of the youth program for 3.5 years. In that time, he had grown from a scared, nervous boy into a confident young musician. The concert was being held at the Detroit Symphony Hall, the most famous concert venue in the city. As Marcus walked into the grand building, he remembered how overwhelmed he had felt during his first audition. Now these elegant surroundings felt like home. Marcus's family and friends filled several rows of seats. His mother, Sarah, sat in the front row, wearing a new dress she had bought specially for the occasion. Mrs. Hartwell was beside her, beaming with pride. Even Tommy and several of Marcus's classmates had come to support him. Behind them sat the 5 children Marcus taught every Saturday, Emma and 4 others whose families had struggled like his own. Marcus had insisted that they get free tickets to the concert. He wanted them to see what was possible when you didn't give up on your dreams. Dr. Williams introduced Marcus to the audience of wealthy donors and community leaders. 3.5 years ago, a 12-year-old boy auditioned for our program, she said into the microphone. He had been teaching himself to play on a broken piano in an abandoned building. Tonight, that same young man will perform an original composition that tells his remarkable story. The audience applauded as Marcus walked onto the stage. The concert grand piano gleamed under the bright lights. Marcus had performed many times now, but never on a stage this large or for an audience this important. He sat down at the piano and looked out at the sea of faces. Then he closed his eyes and thought about his journey, from the cold basement where he first touched piano keys, through all the struggles and breakthroughs, to this moment Marcus began to play Broken Keys, Beautiful Dreams. The piece started with harsh, discordant notes that sounded like broken piano strings and missing keys. The music was jagged and incomplete, representing the old upright piano that had started everything. But slowly, gradually, the broken sounds began to transform. Beautiful melodies emerged from the chaos. The music became stronger and more confident, just like Marcus's own journey. He played passages that sounded like rain turning to sunshine, like tears turning to laughter, like dreams refusing to die. The middle section of the piece was soft and grateful, representing Mrs. Hartwell's kindness and all the people who had believed in him. Then the music built to a triumphant finale that seemed to fill every corner of the great hall. When the last note faded away, the audience was completely silent for a moment. Then they erupted in thunderous applause. Many people were on their feet, and Marcus could see tears in several eyes. As Marcus stood to bow, he saw something that made his heart skip. In the back of the hall, Mr. Rodriguez was clapping enthusiastically. The old caretaker had somehow gotten a ticket to the concert. When their eyes met, Mr. Rodriguez gave Marcus a thumbs up and a huge smile. After the concert, people crowded around Marcus to congratulate him. But the most meaningful moment came when little Emma ran up to him. "Marcus, that was the most beautiful music I ever heard," she said. "Someday I want to play like that too." "You will," Marcus told her. "Just keep practicing and never give up." A woman in an expensive dress approached Marcus with a business card. "I'm a talent scout from Juilliard School in New York," she said. "We'd like to offer you a full scholarship to study with us." Marcus stared at the card in amazement. Juilliard was the most famous music school in America. Students from around the world competed for the chance to study there. "Are you serious?" Marcus asked, completely serious. "Your performance tonight was extraordinary. You have the talent to become a professional concert pianist." Over the following weeks, Marcus's life changed dramatically. The video of his performance went viral on social media, with millions of people watching and sharing his story. News stations interviewed him, and magazines wrote articles about the boy who learned piano on a broken instrument. But with all the attention came opportunities to help others. Marcus started a foundation called Broken Piano that provided musical instruments and lessons to children from low-income families. Donations poured in from people who were inspired by his story. The first thing Marcus did with the foundation money was buy new pianos for community centers and neighborhoods like the one where he grew up. He made sure that no child would have to learn on broken keys like he had. Marcus also convinced the city to rebuild the old community center where his journey had begun. The new building was designed specifically for music education, with practice rooms, performance spaces, and high-quality instruments. At the center of the new building's lobby, Marcus displayed the remains of the original broken piano. A plaque beside it read, "Dreams can overcome any obstacle. Every child deserves the chance to make beautiful music." When Marcus graduated from high school, he was the valedictorian of his class. In his speech, he talked about the importance of following your dreams even when others doubt you. 4 years ago, kids called me piano boy as an insult, Marcus said to his graduating class. Today I wear that name with pride. Sometimes the thing that makes you different is exactly the thing that makes you special. The audience gave him a standing ovation, led by Tommy and even Jake, both of whom had become good friends with Marcus over the years. That fall, Marcus moved to New York to begin his studies at Juilliard, but he never forgot his roots. Every summer, he returned to Detroit to teach at his foundation and perform benefit concerts. Mrs. Hartwell, now in her 80s, attended every one of his performances in Detroit. "I always knew you were special," she would tell him, "but you've exceeded even my wildest dreams." Marcus's mother, Sarah, had also achieved her own dreams. Inspired by her son's success, she had gone back to school and become a teacher, just like she had always wanted. She often told her students about Marcus's story to encourage them to pursue their own goals. By the time Marcus was 21, he was performing with major orchestras around the world. Critics called him one of the most promising young pianists of his generation, But he never forgot the lesson he had learned in that cold basement so many years ago. During one interview, a reporter asked Marcus what advice he would give to young people who felt like their dreams were impossible. "I would tell them about a broken piano in a basement," Marcus said with a smile. "Some people looked at that piano and saw junk that should be thrown away. But I looked at it and heard beautiful music. The difference wasn't the piano, it was how I chose to see it." Marcus continued, "Your circumstances don't define your potential. A broken piano taught me to make music. Doubters taught me to believe in myself. Every obstacle became a stepping stone." The interviewer was moved by his words. "So you're saying that being called Piano Boy as an insult actually helped you?" "It did more than help me," Marcus said. "It taught me that other people's limitations don't have to become your own. When they mocked my piano, they were really mocking their own inability to see possibilities. I chose to see music where they saw junk." Years passed and Marcus's foundation grew larger and more successful. Hundreds of children were now learning music through the Broken Piano program. Many of them came from situations similar to Marcus's childhood: single-parent homes, financial struggles, and neighborhoods where arts education was rare. Some of these children went on to study at prestigious music schools. Others simply discovered a lifelong love of music that enriched their lives in countless ways. All of them learned the same lesson Marcus had learned: that beautiful things can grow from broken beginnings. When Marcus turned 25, he decided to give a special concert back in Detroit. The performance would be held at the new community center that had been built where his musical journey began. All proceeds would go to expanding music education programs in Detroit's schools. The night of the concert, Marcus stood backstage looking out at the audience. The seats were filled with people whose lives had been touched by his story: his old teachers, childhood friends, students from his foundation, and families who had benefited from the scholarships his program provided. In the front row sat Mrs. Hartwell, now 87 but still sharp and proud. Beside her was his mother, Sarah, wearing the same proud smile she had worn at every one of his performances. Mr. Rodriguez was there too, along with Emma and the other children Marcus had taught, many of whom were now teenagers pursuing their own musical dreams. As Marcus walked onto the stage, he carried with him a piece of wood. It was a key from the original broken piano, the only piece that had been saved from the dumpster all those years ago. "Tonight, I want to tell you about a piano that changed everything," Marcus began, holding up the old key. This key came from an instrument that most people would have called worthless. But sometimes the most broken things hold the most beautiful possibilities. Marcus sat down at the concert grand piano and began to play. He performed some of his favorite classical pieces, but he ended with Broken Keys, Beautiful Dreams, the composition that had launched his career. As the final notes filled the air, Marcus thought about how far he had come.